Maybe you thought Christmas was over. Christmas Day was almost 2 weeks ago now. But actually, the Christmas season extends for 12 more days. The 12 days of Christmas, concluding with today, which is called Epiphany. The word Epiphany means a revealing or a manifestation of the Christ child to the larger world. And we have this story of the coming of the Magi, or the wise men, from a far country to the east to come and celebrate his birth and bring gifts. And so this actually, Epiphany is always on January the 6th. It happens to be on Sunday this year, today. In some countries, Epiphany is the big day. It's when gifts are exchanged within families, because in remembrance of the wise men and their gifts that they brought to Jesus, people give their gifts to one another on Epiphany or Epiphany Eve. That is also called Three Kings Day. So it seems to me to be it seems timely to focus on this story this morning, this story of the wise men, a familiar story to most of us, and yet it's a complicated story and not totally a pleasant story. It starts off pleasant enough with these foreigners, these astrologers, apparently, people who studied the stars, had seen a special star arise in the east. And they understood that to mean the birth of a special baby, a baby who would be a king, royalty. And so they journeyed to Bethlehem to find this child so they could worship him. But then we know that there's an intruder entering the picture, Herod, who was the ruler. And Herod epitomizes all the worst aspects of power. From those wise men, he hears about the birth of a future king in the little town of Bethlehem, and he fears that this future king will rival his power, and he can't stand that. And so he politely requests that these travelers come back and tell him the location of the baby, he says, so that I can also go and worship him. But that's not what he had in mind. So the wise men travel on to Bethlehem. They visit the baby and the Holy Family. They give their gifts. And then they are instructed in a dream to go home a different way. Well, eventually Herod figures this out, discovers that they're not coming back, and he flies into a rage. And now he's sure that there's this threat to his throne. And he does what most tyrants do. He attempts to solve his problem through use of the sword. He orders what is referred to as the murder of the innocents. All the male babies in and around Bethlehem, 2 years of age and younger. Now we say, what kind of a story is that? It's a horrible story. It's a disgusting story. It's not appropriate for children. It's not appropriate for adults either, for that matter. We don't like that story. Such a change. 2 weeks ago, we were celebrating the birth of this cute little baby born in a stable, laid in a manger. 2 Sundays ago, we reenacted that story a couple of times, actually, through the drama of the youth and then the children. And then we had baby dedication. 5 babies were dedicated, and then a meditation that was titled The Worth of a Baby. So it was all good stuff about the birth of this baby Jesus. And also all our babies, our children, grandchildren, friends, church family. The worth of a baby, and now today we're talking about a threat to a baby, that baby. But along with the threat of a baby, and we also, it's not just the threat to the baby, but the threat that a baby can bring. Talk more about that. 2 weeks ago, we heard about angels appearing and saying, "Fear not, I'm bringing you good news of great joy." And then those angels are now returning and bringing warnings. First to the wise men, saying, "Avoid Herod, go home by a back road." And then to Joseph, pretty soon after that, saying, "Get out of town quickly. Go to Egypt and stay there until the threat has passed." And so the Holy Family left in the middle of the night, traveling to a strange country as refugees, their lives literally at risk. And they stayed there what is considered to be maybe a couple of years. It was only after Herod's death that it was safe for this family to venture back toward their homeland. But then, as they got near, an angel appeared to Joseph in a dream and said, "The one you feared is dead. You can go home now." But as they got near their homeland, they found out that Herod's son was ruling in his place. He probably wouldn't be much better. And so they traveled on to the north, to the land of Galilee and the village of Nazareth. And as the prophet Isaiah had prophesied many years before, he shall be called a Nazarene, a resident of Nazareth. That's our story from the second chapter of Matthew's Gospel. It's a shocking story. There's a lot of danger lurking behind that peaceful manger scene. And the manger scene, as we still have over here, and we always put the wise men in, even though they came a little later than the shepherds. They probably wouldn't have been there together, but they're a part of those birth stories of Jesus. And we like those stories, and we like that scene. It seems so peaceful and worshipful, and yet it was more than that. It was a baby being born into a real world, a fearful world, a place where violence and disruption are real, where tyrants sometimes rule, a world that in some ways has not changed that much over 2,000 years. And we have Herod as a part of that story. And you know, his fear of this baby in some ways was right. He was correct that he should fear that baby. Herod was no dummy. He was violent and he was a shrewd politician, but he kind of knew where threats could come from. Unlike the sometimes dim-witted shepherds who may have just seen a cute and innocent baby there, he knew something was up. He knew that that star was announcing a royal birth. And he saw potential competition. He saw a potential threat to his reign and to his dynasty. He saw the threat of a baby. The threat of a baby. Well, that baby did represent a threat, but not in the way that he suspected. That baby would be a king, but not the kind of king that he feared. That baby would grow up to say, "My kingdom is not of this world." But he still posed and still poses a threat to the powers that be, to all those who would seek power and influence through violence and suppression. And then, about 30 years later, there were some other threatened rulers who made a decision that they needed to finish the job that Herod had tried to start. Caiaphas, the high priest, said, "It's better that one man die than that our whole way of life be put in jeopardy." One commentator states, "Bible scholars disagree on many things about Jesus, but virtually all agree that he was crucified by the religious and political establishment as a threat to their power." His death marked the ultimate slaughter of the innocent, because he was truly innocent. And while many innocent deaths seem to really have no purpose. We know they bring sorrow, they bring tears, they bring a lot of questions about why that death of Jesus did have a purpose.
Amen.
God's purpose in providing a means by which human sin can be overcome, forgiveness can be achieved, reconciliation with God can be made possible. So Herod was right, in a way. That baby posed a real threat. A threat to him, a threat to all who believe that might makes right. That innocent baby of Bethlehem challenged and disrupted and dismantled that world that is based on raw power and power maintained through the threat of violence. In a great cosmic struggle, an initial battle was fought there in Bethlehem, and a later battle was fought at Golgotha.
Mm-hmm.
But that was not the end. Even the cross and death could not bring an end to the reign of that king.
Amen.
Actually, that was only the beginning of his reign. A resurrection followed, and the establishment of his kingdom. A kingdom without end, eternal in the heavens. So I guess one thing we can learn from this story, never underestimate the power of a baby. Herod sort of knew that. Never underestimate what something so tiny can do. A tiny seed of an idea or an inspiration whose time has come. Never underestimate the potential of a new year, a blank calendar spread out before us, 2019. What will we do with it? What lies before us? What potential does it hold? Never underestimate the possibilities of a new baby or a new year. So we have this unsettling story set on Epiphany Sunday, and it's about revealing the Christ child to the world. He is still being revealed. It is up to us to help reveal Jesus to our needy and hurting world. And the rest of this story tells us that God indeed did send this innocent baby, his own son, into our world to radically change and transform that world. And we're a part of that transformation. We are here because of what God has done and what God has given. And so now, in spite of the tyrants who still reign, the suffering that is still out there, the uncertainty within our world, now there is hope. This baby has taken the sin and the suffering of the world upon himself and redeemed that world and established his kingdom. And before he left us on that final night, as he was having his final supper with his disciples, he gave us, he left them, and he leaves us with these sacred symbols that we're going to have today. Symbols of bread, representing his broken body, and a cup representing his spilled blood. Reminders of that sacrifice that he has made for each one of us. And he said to us, as he said to them, "Do this in remembrance of me." So today you are invited to come forward and to take this bread and this cup and to remember that baby born so long ago, that baby that became a king who still reigns, and to remember the gift that he has given us through his death on the cross, our salvation. May we come remembering and honoring him.